Hey everyone, it's your favorite disabled philologist, classical philologist, and today I wanted to talk about something which I'm kind of late to the party on, but I feel like I have a good perspective to give. So even though it's kind of really late, I haven't heard this much anywhere, and that's um what the Roman Empire means to me. And yeah, I'm kind of surprised no one has given the Latin American uh or Latino perspective on the Roman Empire, given that, you know, um a Romance language defines so much of our culture. And I'll get to the complexities of that in a second, but how do I feel about the Roman Empire? Well, let me just say that I think Rome is great. Um, I think the Greco-Roman world, um, was one of the most important, most influential, um, periods of history and sort of periods of cultural influence. Just period. Um, And, I think I can say with confidence that, um, that was the case. I've taken 4 years of Latin, um, in high school and two in college. I can read it pretty well. I mean, obviously, I read Spanish. It's a derivative language, so I have an advantage in that respect, but still, and, I know it's popular to want to play up the indigenous parts of our culture, um, of Latin American culture, and that's cool, man. I respect that. I think that's great. But what I don't like is that it gets roped into being indigenous in some respect, and like the fact that, like, you know, people pretend like Spanish is some sort of indigenous language or that it's it's part of Latin American indigenous identity when it's really not, because if you actually go to Latin America, you would realize the defining thing that distinguishes indigenous groups usually, not always, but the most important thing is language. In fact, in Guatemala, that's what distinguishes basically mestizos and what we call Latinos into a group. Like, that's literally the defining characteristic, that we dress in a Western manner and that we speak Spanish as our first language. So, yeah, I don't really know how I feel about that. I feel like that maybe ties into the sort of mythology that Latin American countries have built um for themselves, like how this wasn't um these new empires were something entirely new in history. There wasn't a mix of its scale seen in history, which is not really that true because people have been intermarrying and um assimilating to different cultures in all of history. You know, that didn't just happen with the Spanish and indigenous people. In fact, that's a Roman cultural trademark. Here we go. That's Roman, guys. That's Greco Roman. That's the way Greeks treated their subjects. They intermarried with them and then assimilated them. I mean, the original inhabitants of Spain were a variety of uh, Celtic, um, Carthaginian who were, you know, um, they were what we would consider Lebanese, back then Phoenician, um, and like pre-Indo-European Basque peoples. And yet, with the Basque, of course, it took a little bit more time, but that's what they did, and they did that same thing with the Celts in Gaul and the various Scythian groups in what we would today know as the Balkans, right? Dalmatia, Romania, and all of those places, man. Um, the Spanish got it from the Romans. Like, there's a direct cultural link in that respect. Um, now that I'm finished talking about that, um, let me get to the ambivalent part of it, which is the indigenous part. Um, and I mean, what can I say, bro? We can't deny, like, regardless of your political beliefs, we can't deny that the Spanish forcibly assimilated a lot of indigenous people. They also didn't assimilate a lot of other ones, but I mean, there's a reason why, you know, the religious aspects of a lot of indigenous practices are Christianized and Catholicized. And it was because of them, and they did it by force, and they forced them to learn Spanish. And not only that, like, you could be like, okay, that's standard Roman stuff, that's standard world history stuff. Not that it makes it okay, but, like, not only that, in the case of the Mayans and those few indigenous groups that were literate, like had writing systems, they burned their um their text, guys. I mean, we all I think in the Mayan arena we have a few codices, Codex Mendoza, the Códice Borbónico or Borbonica, which I guess what would you call that? The Bourbon Codex. We have the Popol Vuh, we have Los Anales de Ishil, but it's like there were literally thousands of years of knowledge wiped away. Um, like in the span of a few hundred years, not even. Um, and in that sense, I feel like mestizos hold a kind of um complex legacy with um the Spanish Empire, who, like I said, has a direct cultural link with the Roman Empire, because even the Germanic groups that took over the governments of the the Western Roman Empire, including Spain, the Visigoths. People don't know this, but they were Romanized, bro. They were foederati, bro, for in a lot of cases. They spoke Latin. They were assimilated to Roman customs. And so, yeah, man, even the Muslims too, they saw, not as much, but a lot of them saw themselves as continuing that legacy, and they translated Greek and Latin works and stuff too. Um, but anyway, yeah, there's a complexity there because, like, we hold so fast on to Spanish because in the case of the mestizo, like me, um, it's the only thing we have because the other side of our knowledge, the other side of our heritage was wiped out by centuries of colonialism. And look, man, I'm not anti European, I'm not anti indigenous, but that's, again, those are just historical realities. And I'll give you an example, okay? Not that it matters, but like, I'm around 5/8 Spanish and 3/8 everything else, mainly split between indigenous and African, okay? But like, my tatarabuela, my um great great grandmother, she was a criolla. She was a an American born, or in this case Guatemalan born, I mean America in the general sense, um Spaniard, and her parents owned a plantation. But um guess what, man? She spoke an indigenous language. She spoke a Mayan language, bro. Not because not because she was in any way ethnically indigenous. I know I've said that on here before, but I was mistaken. I thought that because she spoke a Mayan language, I think it was either Quiche or Cachiquel, that she had some ancestry. But no, it was simply because the servants on her parents' plantations took care of her since she was a little girl, and she learned it that way. And if that's not a perfect, like, microcosm for the complexities of the Latin American colonial and post colonial experience, then I don't know what is. And also, again, in a more extended sense, the legacy of the Roman Empire. Um, and of course, we also kept Greco Roman notions of hospitality and the pater familias, which I've talked about before, but um, yeah, our notion of patriarchy is like so influenced by Rome in Latin America. Um, and I'll leave a link to a video I did about that, but yeah, man. Um, I love Rome, but at the same time, I can't be like "Viva el Imperio Romano" or stuff like that. But I can't do that. What I can say is "Viva el Imperio Romano." Eh, I mean, I love Rome and I love Greece, but like, that's the thing, man. I can't, knowing what I am, being a mestizo, being a Latin American, knowing history, completely say that because of the legacy of the Spanish Empire. Um, and also, let's be honest, guys. The Greeks and the Romans didn't give a crap about disabled people. Like that's another big part of the paterfamilias that if you were in any way disabled, it's over for you in Rome. You're nothing. Um, and anyway, yeah, that's how I feel about the Roman Empire, guys. AKA Imperium Romanum, aka El Imperio Romano, aka Basilea Romeon. But yeah, guys, um, Valete, Valete.